Okay, for people joining this live stream, this is something a little different for us. We are going to talk about suggestions and priorities for Wolfram Language. These are suggestions that have been coming from Wolfram Language users, and we've been accumulating them in this issue tracker here. I thought we would have the opportunity to talk about what people's wish list in this holiday period for bugs to be fixed, new features, new functionality, and so on. So I think we have a couple of hundred of these that are listed here out of, well, tens of thousands that we've accumulated over the years, but I thought we'd go through the ones that people have brought up.
These are all recent ones from the pre-release tester. So these are all, very fresh, recent issues that people have reported.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we should just dive in, start at the top. Are these alphabetized by category, cloud and development, deployment?
They're grouped by area, and then they're by number. The second ordering is by number. So the higher the number in that little blue blobby thing, that's the more recent. So
okay, all right. So what should we start on cloud and deployment here? By the way, I should explain to people one very strange thing about my computer setup today is that I've been running some long computation and I expect it to be finished by now. And here I'll show the status monitor. It's running across 40 cores on a bunch of my computers. And those little red dots are pieces of the computation that aren't finished. And it's been going down every few minutes. Another core finishes its part of the computation. And I have been, I think it's one of these things that's kind of a precursor to the AI rights movement. I have felt it inappropriate to kill this thing, given how much computation it's done. So I'm hoping that's not going to interfere with anything to do with this live stream. Shouldn't do. And I'm going to be excited when it finally finishes, which might happen in the next few minutes. Okay, let's start off with the very first thing here, better messages for lack of cloud credits. Boy, okay. Well, that just seems like a bug. So is somebody here from the cloud team who can speak to this?
We have Matt K here.
Okay, so and Matt,
we should get Jan and Joel if possible.
Yeah, can we see? They stopped working and I couldn't see why. I'm not sure this works. Can we see what the messages that he got? Because there should be some solid messaging for that as far as
where is the screenshot?
Under files. Your mouse is very close to it.
Under files.
This is from Michael Solomey, who might be on the thing.
Well, that's a bug to begin with. The fact that it says message text not found, that's a bug to be sure.
Yeah, I would think this might be within document generator and more of a document generator thing than the cloud credits thing. So
looks like a pure bug that should be tracked down. And that the document generator is okay. So that's using the notebook template system. We actually just have been updating the notebook template system to include conditional templating for notebooks and some other things like that. So that's Anthony in the UK is dealing with that, and that would be his bug, I think. I don't think that has anything to do with the cloud. Well, maybe it has to do with the cloud credit system, but it's flowing through the notebook document generator.
There's also a link to the...
That's really all I have to say. We've got hundreds of these to go through. That one is just a bug and should get fixed.
Sure.
That's a good suggestion to put progress in. Arnaud, could you please adjust your audio? That's a good suggestion to put progress indicators in there. We have been doing a big project to standardize our progress indicators, and that
So I know that we've talked with Fahim about, and I don't know what the status of this is, whether it's a greenlit project or whatever, but about the possibility of having progress callbacks inside the I'm blitzing on the name of his the web stuff, the URL fetch and such.
Yes, URL read. Yeah. I mean, we have, I mean, in things like URL submit, we have callback functionality. Could we get background noise out, please? Okay. In any case, I mean, that's for the purpose for being able to use those callback hooks to generate a download status. I think we should do this. I mean, I don't, and as I say, we are now standardizing our progress reporting mechanism. So I agree this is a good idea. Where do we go back to here? How do we get back to the make the right-hand window in the cloud resizable? I thought it was. Let's take a look. I'm pretty sure that was, but maybe I'm confused by something.
Yeah, the quick links are not, but that's certainly on the cloud wish list for certain.
What do you mean the quick links? So if I go here, you're saying this is not resizable, but I thought that it was resizable when you got into a notebook. Here, hold on.
Try out the file manager or the documentation instead of the quick links. Since the quick links was just HTML, they
yeah, this is resizable.
Yeah, the documentation one is, and the cloud file manager definitely could be.
I think it is.
If it's not, then it's a bug.
I'm here, by the way.
Yeah, you know that's completely responsive, so that there won't be any design needed. That's just enabling it.
Fine, good. Thanks for the suggestion. Seems now in terms of the quick links, I think that's less clear that that's worthwhile because those links aren't going to do anything. I mean, they're not they're just a stack of things there.
Yeah, making it wider would just add white space.
I mean, maybe it's worth doing that. Maybe it's worth enabling that just so that people get the sense that it's possible to resize things. I don't see that would do any harm, but I don't think it's going to do anything interesting in that case.
Okay, yeah, and one thing we've talked about in the past is adding a little handle to the separator line there for the resizable ones, which has been considered, but then it's a little bit more clutter. Just like a little dot or something you can grab.
For which? On here?
Yeah, not the quick links, but yeah, for the documentation and the.
Well, when you get to the region of that separator, I don't see why it shouldn't come up with something on a hover effectively.
Yeah, that would make sense.
That is some kind of arrows back and forth. Mike on our live stream is asking, why not start with the support or feature request tickets? How about make your file searchable from a search bar? We are certainly aware of that issue. The issue is running our text search system on these files. I think we are technically close to being ready to do that. The issue is you have to take a notebook file and essentially scrape it to get the content that is meaningfully text searchable. We've got to be able to incrementally run the indices for the text search system and kick off those index updates whenever files are updated. There's a bit of complicated plumbing there. Also, the text search system that we have is getting better and better. I think for 12.1 it will be quite respectable. I don't know, Matt, can you speak to the status of searching in files?
Well, yeah, text search, I definitely say that is far more respectable in 12.1. Searching in files, the biggest technical hurdle there is definitely keeping the your index as up to date as possible.
Right. So I mean, the question would be,
as you edit your files, you have to make sure you get relevant results in your search.
Right. I mean, the fact is there's an update search index which is quite efficient, but I don't know whether we understand whether it can really be run sort of every single time somebody saves a file. I think that may be prohibitive. I don't know.
Yeah, we would definitely have to run a whole bunch of performance checks to see what that would do to the cloud.
Right. Okay, let's go back here. Oh, come now. What is that? Okay, how do I get to the whole thing? Do I say view all issues here? That's not going
Click
to
on
work
the,
well.
the Zoom chat, or I'll post it in the Rocket chat as well for you. I mean, I usually right click and then I just open in new tabs and then I leave the one, Yeah,
this is not our system, this issue tracker, so not responsible for this thing. All right, what do I do here? I say open a new tab.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
Command Shift click will do it too.
Okay.
That's
Set
from
file date of a local object. I know. Could you please adjust your microphone so we don't have to hear this whooshing sound? Okay, set file date of a cloud object. I don't understand what this is. Oh, to set the file date of a cloud object. Just like you can set the file date of a file. It's an interesting idea.
Is this basically touch?
It's like touch, yes. It's like Unix touch. Listen, there's people asking about 3D Voronoi diagrams. If we're going to talk about that, we need Charles and Roger here.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
I mean, we're aware of it.
Wait. We're still talking about file date. That was a precursor comment. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's talk about set file date first. I think this is a perfectly reasonable feature request. It's a little complicated because, to some extent, people want accurate provenance of materials. And to some extent, I mean, like, for example, if you set your file date back and that causes the indexer to not decide that your file is new, what do you want to have happen? Right? In other words, is the file in fact new, or do you want to, is it like I was just copying some files from the 1990s into the cloud, and I want their file dates in the cloud to be from the 1990s. But on the other hand, I might want to know that that file was modified 10 minutes ago, so to speak, for restyling something or needing to reindex. But Joel, can you comment on being able to do set file date? I mean, set file date for a local object should be rather straightforward.
Right.
Because
and
that's
this would be straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah.
So put it on the list. Seems like a good idea. Okay, we've got questions about 3D Voronois. So let's just to set context here. We have Voronoi mesh, and if I do Voronoi mesh of 2D, random real, let's say 10, let's say 20, 2, I get a lovely Voronoi diagram. If I do the corresponding thing, oh great. Is this the version that was crashing all the time? Do you want that crash log, John?
No, we think it's fixed.
Okay, that's probably an earlier version because I'm running my current. How do I relaunch another copy of the same desktop?
Not easily, because Apple says you don't need to.
Great. All right. Well, I'll run the prototype build. That will be even more dangerous in terms of. I could run a. Okay, let me go ahead and run this prototype build. Okay, I was going to do a Voronoi mesh I was going to attempt to do the thing that people want to have work, and then we'll talk about what does and doesn't work. Okay, so this isn't working. Okay, Roger, what do we have to say about this?
So we're well aware of it. We couldn't, so you look at those cells that come out there, they are general convex cells. So in the 2D case, they're polygons. In the 3D case, there will be general convex polyhedra. Now we didn't have a general polyhedra object, which we designed and added to version 12. It didn't make it for the 12.1 release, but we hope that we expect this to make it for the 12.2 release.
So we now do have random polyhedra. We just don't have random polyhedral cells that can be connected in a Voronoi mesh. Is that correct?
They're not random at all. They're very
well,
much.
I know the
there's nothing random.
Voronoi ones. Well, I understand that. I'm saying funny shaped polyhedra that fit.
Yeah, general. Yeah, not random. General. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we can do that now. So that was a barrier, before that barrier is lifted, but we still ran out of basically, time resources for them. That was it.
All right. So expect it for 12.2 is what you're basically saying.
Yes.
Okay. Next point on the live stream is about split windows for a document. I agree that will be useful. I don't know, John, maybe you can comment on, I mean, we've talked about this for years. It's part of the general project of making multi-pane notebooks.
Yeah.
It's a complicated thing. Do you want to comment on it?
Well, I mean, we could work on split panes without solving any of the other problems and deliver it sooner, of course. But yeah, it's something we'd like to do. It's just a matter of priorities and resources. As I have a
question. I have a question. Why is it the case that you can't open the same notebook twice, right? In a single session?
Typically, there's a couple of special case exceptions, but typically.
I mean, like the documentation notebook, you can open twice.
Yes.
So, I mean,
and there's a very specific path for doing that. It's
right, but for me,
I mean, among other things, it can't be savable. You can't have.
I understand.
You can't have two separate copies that both save to the same file. That would be very problematic.
I mean, one of the things that I've needed recently, for example, working on function repository entries that have a lot of code in them and a lot of documentation, I want to be able to look at the documentation at the same time as I'm looking at the code. But I'd be reasonably happy to have a read-only view for one of those. I wouldn't be as happy as to have a read-write view, but I would be somewhat happy to have a read-only view. Is that something that's possible?
Yeah.
Is there a UX we can imagine that wouldn't be just irreducibly confusing for that?
No, that's my concern is the confusion parts.
But I mean, split panes come with horizontal splitting as well, right? I mean, in other words, splitting.
It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It just depends on the implementation.
Right. I mean, there's also complex UX to do with split pane. I mean, I remember back from many, many years ago, split pane editors that were super confusing. But I think those have gotten, it's gotten better in recent times. I mean, like, for example, when the split views end up intersecting, what do you do?
Yeah. And, I think most, first class versions basically, they're live updating both panes.
Right. Right. Well, it'd be interesting to hear from people how enthusiastic people are about split panes. It's not something that we're prioritizing super highly right now, but like to hear from people about that. Okay, let's see. Wow. Okay, we're really jumping around here on some of the things on the live stream, but let's address them. Mohammed is talking about date object and the need for a half-yearly. Wow, that's a great suggestion. I don't think we necessarily have the people here who would know about that, but that's a granular date object with a granular size of a quarter. You're asking for a granular size of a half year. That's a completely sensible suggestion, and I don't see any reason we shouldn't be able to implement that. So let's see, who's going to pass that on? That would go to Nick, I think.
I can pass that on.
Thank you. Good suggestion. What's that?
Rash is here as well, so I'm sure you can directly put it
Okay. Somebody who's the trouble with these handles that I can't pronounce is that you're gonna force me to say something. Oh, I see. I see Vran, but I don't know whether that's. I have no idea how to parse out those letters. So sorry if I'm doing it wrong. I see. I'm going to say. So I see is asking, would like to be able to use Wolfram Cloud Notebook with a remote kernel. Imagine using the Wolfram Cloud Notebook with a kernel on a Raspberry Pi or a supercomputer or whatever. Cloud Notebook with a remote kernel. We have discussed that. Arnaud, can you speak to that at all?
Well, I think you're going to have the notebook has to run on your own machine. I don't think you can do it with having.
No, but the issue is that, no. What we're talking about is this. We're talking about remote evaluate, right? Which is something that is coming. I guess remote evaluate isn't available here yet, although I think I have a version of remote evaluate, right? That and remote evaluate should be able to use any machine to which you have credentials to do SSH and on which you have a Wolfram engine running, right? Yes, is that correct?
Yeah, well, the way I interpret this is more like how it works with Jupyter, where you start a Jupyter notebook server on your local machine, and then you connect out to things you can connect to. The other way around is really hard to do securely. I mean,
I mean, even the machines to which you have SSH credentials, I would not encourage an environment where we suggest people upload their credentials to the cloud.
That's an
this
interesting
is more about
problem,
like a simple version of an EPC that you just run on your own.
No,
machine.
I don't believe that's correct. I don't believe
Well,
that's correct. I don't believe that's what's being asked for. I think what's being asked for is from the cloud, from the public cloud, being able to, but maybe it could be corrected, from the public cloud being able to address a remote machine. And so what you're bringing up is the issue of how do you get the credentials for the remote machine without passing them through the public cloud in plain text, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a trust issue there, right? I mean, it's and I mean, even if
why isn't this
even if Wolfram is behaving totally in good faith, which of course we would, but that doesn't mean that things don't happen.
No, I don't understand. Why isn't this something like a three-legged OAuth story? Isn't there a way of authenticating? I can't think through the cryptographic protocol in real time.
For the SSH protocol, I'm not aware of one, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
But I see. So your point is that somehow our cloud would have to SSH to the remote machine in order to initiate the evaluation on the remote machine. That's your point.
Or we have to use another protocol, which we're likely not supporting at present.
What about PubSub with MQTT or something, where the idea is that what happens is that somebody has to separately SSH to that machine, set it up a PubSub client on that machine that can then essentially rendezvous with a PubSub client that our cloud talks to.
Maybe
that, I think would work. So in other words, you would not be able to do it. You would not be able to initiate the SSH connection from,
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of some Python program I came across not so long ago, and I don't remember what the name of it was. But the idea was that it was like a secure file copy from any system on the internet to any other system on the internet. And it basically involved, you would kind of submit a request for the file copy, and it would send you a token. You could take that token then to the other system by, whatever means, and then be able to, access the file from the other system.
Let's zoom out a little bit. Why does one care, so to speak? The question is, yeah, I mean, look, using using remote kernels from a desktop is absolutely, we've been able to do that for 30 years. you know, in my example that I'm running right now, and look at this, it's almost done. We're down to two cores still running. You know, here I'm from my particular desktop machine here. I'm running a parallel computation across 40 cores on what is it, 3 or 4 different machines here. You know, that's standard stuff from the desktop, but that's because there isn't an authentication issue here, because I've got the authentication to get to those machines is, I don't exactly know how it was done, but it could be stored by now in our system credential mechanism. All right, let's move on. So we don't completely understand that one. Oh, wait a minute. The idea will be able to use machines in which I'm logged in with my Wolfram account. So the Wolfram Cloud should be aware of the kernels that you have functioning. Okay, so this thing about what you're asking for there in terms of having a drop down for what computers you want to use, well, guess what? On the desktop, where there isn't an authentication issue, we have exactly that. You can pick, you literally you're picking from kernel configuration options. You are picking which machines you want to use. So that absolutely works and has worked, as a matter of fact, for more than 31 years. It just is hard to do from the cloud for these authentication reasons. Feature request. Would like to be able to use my local Mathematica front end with a remote kernel on an EC2 box in AWS. We are well aware of this issue. We are actively working on it. As a matter of fact, there is a version, the first thing that is I will actually probably use even today for something, is something that uses the AWS batch mechanism to allow one to submit a batch processing request that will asynchronously be run and will, well, I think in that particular case, it was throwing the results into S3 or something, and just returning some information that the thing had finished. But the idea of being able to use to be able to connect to kernels running in AWS, Azure, whatever, is yes, it's absolutely a thing. We are actively working on it. I think.
But if it's just from the just from the front end, I think, you know, like, it doesn't really. That's already possible, I think, John. I mean, like, if it's just a remote,
it's not convenient
Linux machine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What Stephen's talking about would be, you know, a wrapper around it that makes it a lot more convenient, where you're not having to do things like juggle with IP addresses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but if you have the IP address or the DNS name of the, you know, EC2 box, and you have the SSH connection. I mean, basically, if you can SSH to the machine, you know, from your local machine, then you should be able to set up a, you know, remote kernel from the front end, right?
Yeah, with potential security issues, but yeah.
Hold on one second, guys. I can maybe show you something. Let me just see. I'm looking for something here. This isn't. No, I can't. This isn't quite what I was looking for. Let's see. Hold on one second. That's okay. All right. This is actually a thing for running jobs, this is not completely packaged yet, but getting there, for running AWS jobs remotely. I haven't yet used this, I have to admit. So this is a remote submit, submitting to an environment of a particular of a particular file and being able to run things, getting back, let's see, we get back here, and the AWS batch job submit object, which you can then pull the results back from. Cool, eh? Nobody else thinks that's, I mean, I think that's useful, and I think that is not quite the interactive use, but that's the, you know, that's the batch use. I hate to involve people in my issues, but look at that. We're down to one remaining core that hasn't reported its results yet. So soon my computer is going to be free again. Let's see. Would it be possible to enable settings such as page size, page orientation, header, footer to be varied within a notebook? Huh. You know, I have to admit that our attention to printing and pagination, you know, we're always wondering when the world is going to get so modern that, you know, printers will be retired, and it's never happening. And pagination, I think, is a thing that's going to be there for you know, the foreseeable future. John, do you want to comment on those?
Well, so my feeling is that having said what you just said, that if you look at the world of issues inside printing, I'm a bit surprised to see this particular issue come up as, you know, something of keen interest as opposed to, you know, various other sorts of issues.
It'd be nice to see.
I could be wrong. Maybe, you know, such features would be wildly popular. They seem niche to me, but I could be wrong.
Well, so I mean, I don't quite understand why. You know, one way to handle this programmatically would be to take the notebook, you know, given that you want to prepare a notebook with a specific, you know, page size change and so on, and you want to, is to just do this programmatically, to just take the notebook and write a piece of code that basically searches for the relevant sections, breaks the notebook up. Perhaps you use Notebook Import to do that. Perhaps you use our upcoming form notebook mechanism to prepare the notebook. Then essentially programmatically do the printing with those different settings of options with notebook print. I assume that notebook print can take notebook options in it. I assume.
I honestly don't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked at notebook print.
Well, I bet it can. And let's see. Well, that would be a thing that it should be able to do. I mean, clearly you can do a set option.
No, that's
on a notebook
reasonable.
object.
That's reasonable
to do it, but otherwise you could.
That's a notebook save, or notebook. I think notebooks save. I think does something like that. Or notebook open, one of those two.
Well, all of these notebook functions should be able to take options that overwrite the options, temporarily overwrite the options of the notebook. I mean, notebook save obviously is going to write them into the saved notebook, but notebook print should be able to do that as an overlay thing, in which case you should be able to do this programmatically fairly easily.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Sandra is suggesting tabs like a browser for notebooks. Yeah, I mean that's a whole the making the notebook document something more multifaceted is, I mean, there's also the mini view thing that we've been looking at. I think that's something, you know, for the next year or so is something to look at. It's not going to happen, you know, it's not going to be a 12.2 feature or anything. Okay, Ethan is saying, how about smoother scrolling in notebooks? By the way, somebody has, again, background wind noise there. Smoother scrolling in notebooks. Well, John, I mean, you can comment on that. I mean, notebooks are complicated, and you know, I certainly have these multi-100 megabyte notebooks that I use routinely, and the main time when scrolling is problematic is when there are lots of dynamics in these notebooks.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, it comes down to The fact that much of the front end, having being a child of the 90s, is still single threaded, and you want to be able to you want to be able to run scrolling on one thread and do things which might be required to draw on screen on another, and temporarily and instead temporarily fill in with placeholders or something.
What's the story of what is currently being used in the iOS code base? Is that multi-threaded?
Yes, it is.
So I mean that and that's what we hope eventually will merge with the desktop code base.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a complete rebuild of the whole system that took many, many years.
Yeah.
So if you look at the same thing under iOS, and you look at notebook scrolling under iOS, do you find that you have smooth scrolling even for huge notebooks? Unlike
so the scrolling is smooth, but iOS has a separate sort of challenge where iOS is very memory challenged, and if you exceed your memory, it's not like desktop where it's like, well, it's just virtual memory. You have disks.
Right, iOS doesn't have virtual memory, does it? I mean, at the beginning.
No. And if you exceed your memory, iOS will just crash you out. And so, we have to work very hard to make sure that iOS doesn't crash us out, which means that we do things like, for example, when you're scrolling through the notebook, when you get far enough, we'll start unloading and deleting cells from memory that you scrolled past, which means if you scroll the other direction, we have to recreate them. So the scrolling is smooth, but you might be surprised to see, like, well, I just scrolled past this and now it's kind of acting like it's loading it again.
Right.
So that's another sort of compromise that needed to be made for that platform, but yeah.
Okay, next question that we have on the live stream, hatching, coming for 12.1. Is there something to demo for hatching? Roger, can you comment on that?
Yeah.
Hatching.
Why don't you just go to?
Well, here we go. Hatching. What do I say for hatching? So if I say,
just go to its reference page and use just one of the examples.
I want to do it myself.
Then go ahead and do it yourself.
Oh, cool. Wait a minute. How do I get little much finer hatching?
You have to go to the reference page,
which is not yet linked. Okay.
So go use the source then. Surprised.
It may still be futurized. Well, what's happening? Hatching is not visible there. There isn't a reference page for hatching.
So change name. Now I'm trying to remember what the new name is.
Maybe I think it's see also.
Hatch shading?
No, that's for 3D.
Okay.
I thought it was called hatching. And I don't know why this wouldn't refer back to, and this is still a futurized page.
Hold on.
I'm going to, let me just guess. I'm just going to completely guess here. I don't know why it's doing it that way around. Let's try.
So this is like when you get a mysterious object and you're trying to probe it to see what it might be.
Yeah, well, I'm very confused at what this is doing here. So
yeah, so you.
Okay, but
I mean,
seriously, where is the documentation? Or can we just ask Charles?
No, it is in hatching. I think you have an old version. I put a snippet of code on your chat there.
I don't have an old version unless there's something. This should be a today's build. But that hatching, that default hatching is way too coarse. Way too coarse.
Make the number smaller, right?
No, that's not doing that. That rather stupidly, that number is the orientation of the hatching. That's not what it should be, right? And that's not how it was designed. I mean, this hatching is ugly and useless in my view. Okay, can we get Charles, please?
Yep. Try to get the function page again. It's just called hatching for me. Unless you have some outdated version, it's maybe you mistyped it.
That's what I have for hatching. An excised page. I can update documentation here.
Why don't I email it to you here? Let me.
I can run. That's not useful. Raj, what you sent me is not useful.
They were going to be called filling functions. So it should be hatch filling, but I'm now confused of that name change having not yet taken place. So then you need Charles here. I mean, it will be, if you want to go on to explore it more. We've already agreed on this. It just hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Hello.
Hi, Charles.
Hi.
What is the name of hatching? It seems to be hatching, but there isn't a reference page for it.
And it was supposed to be filling, right? Hatch filling.
And
Right. I mean, these are all the changes which have been happening in the last couple of weeks. I'm still working on all that.
Okay. All right. Tell us what the argument structure is for hatching.
The same for the argument structure. We are still changing it. So
okay. All right. So just tell me how to make a fine scaled hatching here.
In the current version, you can't. We are not. The one in the latest build doesn't have yet that.
Okay, fine. All right. Okay, fair enough. But what will happen is the default will be a nice fine hatching, yes?
Yes, like the line size type thing.
Right, but it'll be very close together, and then there'll be various parameters that govern the orientation of the hatching and whether you can have multiple cross hatching and things like that, right?
Yes, probably the first version will not have all the complex case, but yes.
Fair enough. Good. Okay, that was what we wanted to know there. So the answer is for Mohammed on our live stream, it is coming. Will it be supported in the background? Could somebody put themselves on mute, please, who's making a noise? Thank you. The specific question being asked, will it work in the background of vertex shape functions in graphs? Would hope so. Charles, can you comment?
Yes, it should just work as any other graphic directive.
Yeah. So those you build the shape functions, and it's a directive. You can, like any other directive.
Like a color red, or yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the answer is there's a good story there, and it will be in 12.1. So various people here, Rob, Ian, Ben, are all saying they would use split panes. That's very interesting. Okay. Brian, I think this is referring to the remote evaluate, is asking about distributed trust systems like Kerberos. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there is certainly a protocol for doing this. I don't think it is, even running Kerberos, for example. I don't know. I don't know whether there's anybody here who can comment on this. Is anybody, Joel, you might know about this, about Keycloak and its relationship to Kerberos and so on?
I don't know specifically if it supports that, no.
But that will be a mechanism. But Keycloak is for private clouds. I mean, the issue is when you authenticate, can you authenticate relative to your enterprise LDAP system or relative to a social network or something like this? And that's what Keycloak is, which is a sort of middleware wrapper authentication layer, which we're providing in enterprise private clouds, and which I guess we're also going to provide in the public cloud. Is that correct, Joel or Matt?
Yeah, I think that was the idea, is to use that.
Is Matt still here? Maybe Matt can comment on this.
I don't think I have anything more to say than Joel does.
Okay, wrong set of people here to completely answer that question. Okay, Ian is saying he wants to report some issues related to PDF. Yeah, I'm sure there are issues. We would really like to hear particular issues.
So,
you know,
and just a reminder, most PDF issues, probably upwards of 95% of PDF issues, are also printing issues. PDF and printing, the vast majority of what the front end does is identical for both. Assuming he's talking about creating PDF and not importing,
I think so.
of course.
No, importing is a completely different story. Okay, another unpronounceable, either Mr. Ector or Emre. Sorry, I don't know how to say these names. Asking about machine learning feature importance, a way to test what the model has understood, for example, by measuring how performance decreases when you permute some features. I do know that we're working on that. I don't know whether we have anybody from the machine learning team here. If we want to get that question answered, maybe somebody can find Etienne.
Okay.
Okay, we'll come back to that question. All right, let's go back to the issue tracker here. And, oh gosh, how do I get to the, open issues, grouped, here we go. Okay, we're going to, there's another question about machine learning on the live stream. We're going to get somebody who can speak to those here, because these are questions I certainly don't know the answer to. Okay, this is about none as a permissions category. Okay, that's interesting. Let's see. Well, that's a good idea, to have permissions to none for a particular, that's a perfectly sensible idea. Can you, Joel, can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's equivalent to an empty list there.
I know. So why don't we make it? I mean, but it does.
Yeah,
Does
so
it work or does it not work?
Yeah, it should work.
But we didn't document it.
I'll check. It may not be called out specifically, but it may be, implied by saying it's a list of capabilities.
Yeah, we might want to put a none right at the bottom there, or I don't know where that would go. Possible classes. Actually, no, this is where it goes, down here.
Yeah.
Should go right there. Okay, good suggestion, good catch. Okay, next up. Core language, add a reverse rule symbol. Have rule and two-way rule, but no left rule or reverse rule. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I would say two-way rule, which took us a long time to decide to add. I've used that a bunch of times. I think it's a nice thing. What is the value of reverse rule? Would reverse rule mean the same as rule, or would it mean something different? Any thoughts on this subject? I mean, so something like this, is that all? I don't even know how you would get that. I mean, except as input. So I'm a little confused by this. Capable in replacements or graphics. That's a little weird, if I might say so.
Well, we can ask follow up and find out details.
Yeah, I think it's a little weird. I mean, that would be a different syntax for. I mean, in the world of arrows, we've got syntaxes like, how do I get this one? This syntax, it looks like, which is very beautiful. Things like that. But I mean, this syntax would then be simply syntax that would turn into B arrow A. So slightly confused by that one.
Yeah, it looks like Michael Solomon, who reported this one, is on the YouTube chat, so he may, give us more detail in a second.
Right. Hey, I've got a browser question for somebody. How do I open a new window with just keyboard?
Command Shift N, I presume.
No. From the link.
Command Shift click.
Command Shift click. Well, there, good. Well, I at least done something new. No, that's a tab. I wanted a new.
Oh, you wanted a window. Sorry. I don't know. I always use tabs.
Okay, fine. No problem. Middle click. Middle click. That's fascinating. Okay, I do seem to have a mouse which has buttons on it, so we'll try that next time. Okay. Don't we have that now? Warning, don't we have that? I mean, we have a big project in user. Wow, that's really weird. That doesn't. Oh, because that actually is parsed as two separate things.
Yes. We did talk about this in the context of code assistance.
Yeah, and I think we are going to put an indicator at the end of that line to indicate that there's a termination at the end of that line.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the real problem is that some people use and presumably like the legacy behavior.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we should maybe not be too annoying about it.
I think that having a little indicator there that's the end of a line wouldn't be the end of the world, so to speak. Because, and it may also be that this is something that will simply be part of code assistance as a suggestion.
You mean that it's the end of an input?
Yeah, the end of an input.
Yes.
I just don't know what the iconography should look like, a little return character there or something. That was what I suggested. Yeah, it's a reasonable thought there. Okay, all right. Let's try this. Shift click. Oh, that generated a new tab. Asymmetry with part used on left and right hand side of set. Boy, we may not have quite the right people here to look at this. This is an Itai Jose type question, I think. I think this may be in the category.
Get Jose if you want.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do that. I think this may be in the category of there is no design that is convenient for all purposes. And I think there may be some glitches here in what has to be designed. Okay, so you're saying all gives that, which is right. Okay, so let's just try this case. Okay, so you're saying this would be so much better if these were notebook fragments.
This is really Rob.
This is you?
Yeah.
All right, so list is this. Okay, so list a comma 2 gives that. Okay, now the issue is if we set that, let's say to XY, okay, now what happened to list? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, seems okay.
What's wrong with that? Wait a minute. Okay, similar to the following is also, the following is not documented for an association. Okay, so this is an issue. All right, so this works just fine. So now the question is, apparently it also works all comma C. Okay, so we've got an association here. Okay, so assoc of all comma C. Okay, that's great. Okay, assoc of all comma C equals XY. All comma C. That seems very dandy. Okay, now Okay, I see. So now the question is, what happens if you set that association, instead of being a list of values, if you set it to be a correctly conforming outer piece here? That's a quite subtle case. Okay, so let's see. I wish I saw the return value there. Okay, so what did that just do? Okay, I admit that that doesn't seem like it's right. I admit that it probably should do the thing that burrows inside. It's a good suggestion. Did people understand what the issues were?
Yeah, although, I mean, if it burrows inside, then of course that's what happens if you actually wanted to. Well, I don't know. Maybe the presence of all. I'm just worried about the fact that you know, you might have wanted to set something to a literal association, but maybe the presence of all.
Well, you could set it to an equal. You could say the same thing here, and that's not what we're choosing to do.
Yeah.
I think this is just an oversight. Okay, but I don't think we have the right people in this call to address it. Okay, we got a bunch of questions here about machine learning and neural nets, and much of our team is probably, oh, I know what the problem is. I think the team leader, what time is it in Australia right now? It's probably 4 in the morning in Australia. I think the team leader happens to be in Australia right now, and many members of our team are in Europe, and that's a reasonable time for them. Okay, so that explains why we can't reach the leader of that team, but we might be able to reach one of the Europeans. Is there anybody from the machine learning team who joined this call?
The only person I see added just recently was Jose, and I think that was for the core language issues.
Okay. Well, there are questions here about, are more resources being put into neural networks? Absolutely. It's quite a large team working on these things. In fact, I was just meeting with them earlier today. Yeah, I think we may have to save machine learning questions for another episode here. There are questions here about feature importance, about detailed things, about threading layers, which I'm afraid I can't answer offhand. Okay, let's go on with these issues here. Let's see. Subset map should support associations.
Yeah, we are aware of this one and working on it.
It's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Is it obvious what it should do? Let's see. Subset map. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the named, the things associated with particular keys.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice idea. Good idea.
Yep.
We didn't think of it when we were working on subset map originally. Subset map position, that sounds bad. Position specifications are inconsistent.
Yes, we have discussed this one too. There are two issues here. One is that the last argument takes a list of indices instead of a list of lists of indices. So the general position spec would be a list of lists.
Yes.
And to simplify the notation, the first one we decided to go with a list of indices.
Yes.
Exactly. So users are pointing out that it's inconsistent with the result of extract, for example. But we did this on purpose, just to be simpler.
Yes, I think we need to have, because the most common use of subset map is a one-level subset map.
Mm-hmm.
Seth on the live stream is pointing out outer should support associations too. You know, I have this feeling that outer needs to be generalized in a different way. I mean, the thing that drives me crazy with outer is this weird Verogs behavior, which I'm not sure is that useful. together with the well, maybe it is useful, but I think outer, if it's going to do that, it should be, you know, a list of things here, rather than the current Verog's behavior where you're saying things like this, which I don't like at all. Now, Seth is talking about outer with associations, and that does seem like a very reasonable thing to do, very reminiscent of a bunch of the, you know, join across type functionality. How do we have an associations expert here? Anybody want to comment on this? I mean, isn't there a way of doing this using something like join across? Anybody know? Anybody want to comment on that?
I think it should work simply by nesting them. I think this is simpler than it looks. Because associations are one-dimensional effectively. So it should work like...
Yeah, I understand. But if what you want to do is you want to say outer F of the association A goes to 1, B goes to 2, okay? And then X goes to 10, Y goes to 11. Okay, so what would you like this to do? You would like this to turn into the association A goes to the association X goes to F of 1, 10, right?
Exactly.
Etc. Okay, now do you have a way to do that?
Currently, I don't.
Okay,
I agree. Outer should do this.
Okay. Thanks. Good suggestion. All right. Okay. Somebody, these audio things are so frustrating. Okay. Options to resolve options of F, where F is the left-hand side of an enclosing rule. What is that? What is this? Options to resolve.
I think it's just a shorthand, looks like, right? Like options, open, close bracket would just act like options of the function name you're in.
Oh.
I think.
Yeah, as I understand that idea. It's an interesting idea.
Function you're in,
but it's an interesting idea, but I don't know. I mean, that would be in an assignment, and it would go in the same family as options pattern, which does know what. I mean, I'm confused about the semantics of this.
We do something similar for option value.
We do.
Knows. Yeah.
But what does it do if it's option value up and close? Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, and gives the value of name in options matched by options pattern, right? Well, this is a good suggestion. Seems like a good idea. Right. I mean, this is the same as option value. Option filter. Yeah, I agree. There's a bit of messiness here. I think there's a good topic for us to discuss in an ILD meeting. Can we get that on the agenda? These things?
I'll make sure that goes into the ILD agenda.
Okay. Improving the design of okay. Persistent value. Drop the current option merging function, instead elevate it to thought argument. This is quite detailed, very helpful, quite detailed. Unfortunately, the relevant person, Roman, is not here. Yeah, I think we need to talk to him about this. This is pretty detailed stuff.
So there's an internal bug report, and Roman has commented on it, and he's going to follow up on it.
Okay. For use of stickiness. Yeah, I mean, my only concern about this persistence framework is, well, personally, I haven't used it as much as I'd hoped to. I think I'm just somebody, I don't know, it's obviously a psychological issue. I don't like assigning values to variables, and I don't like setting these, you know, I never use set options. I don't like, actually, I'm not so bad about assigning values to variables, right? But like set options, I don't like these global kinds of things. So maybe I'm so I'm just a little concerned that the persistence framework hasn't had as much shakedown as we might hope. But I was, you know, worked extensively on its design and was pleased with it. All right, data import. Option to not.
Mainly shoddy, just maybe somebody can.
Yeah, unless we want to go to a different section, we already have the people here for that. I'll tell you what, why don't we find shoddy and then we'll go to some other sections. Data set, we're working on it. It's a big project. We're working on it. Rescale should work on associations. Not a foolish idea. Why wouldn't it? Let's see. Rescale. I see. Well, that's probably just an oversight, isn't it?
I think so.
You should just look at the values, right? Rescale the values of the association. Is that what it's saying?
Yeah. I think it's an oversight. Yeah, it's an oversight. Let's fix it. Thanks for the suggestion. Hey, this is great, guys. This is really useful. I mean, because something like this is quite easy to fix and just an important thing. Go ahead.
Look at internal bug reports, so just, you know, they're
right.
being tracked.
But there's a question of actually fixing it. Where were we here? Standardized should work on associations. Okay, same issue. Good suggestion. Okay. Indicate default option value in the new autocomplete dropdown. That's not a foolish idea.
We don't always show the default.
We don't, because typically the reason we don't is because this autocomplete is for things you want to type in.
Yeah, and in fact, I frankly consider it suboptimal when we do show the default in many cases. I mean, like here, the default I think is automatic, right?
Yeah, it is, right.
Yeah, and that's just like a waste of screen space.
It's a waste of screen space. However, I think it's an interesting point from a documentation point of view. If we put it at the bottom, right before these, and we said automatic paren default, you know, in gray paren default, that might be useful as a, you know, because like, well, if you were about to set it to automatic, don't bother because that's the default anyway. Actually, let me make the following point. If we knew it, if somebody had done a set options and it wasn't the default anymore, what would we do?
And we don't have a way of tracking that at the moment.
Are you sure? Well, I mean, so that's a good reason to not pretend it's the default when it might in fact not be. But I think the suggestion that we could potentially show the default as a piece of documentation, but it's got to adapt if there's been a set options done. That's that's important. Yeah, interesting suggestion. That's for the user assistance queue.
Shadi is here.
Okay. Let's just keep going down these for a minute. Auto completion menu for the documentation search bar. Heck yes. Yes.
We have something in the prototype build right now. It's recently improved. I'm not sure if it will make it in 12.1 or not, but we're getting there.
Right. I saw it here. It's pretty weird. I mean, this weird. What the heck is that weird thing? Why does it have that, sort of, ripple effect? John, you can see what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
It's just wrong. What is it doing?
Probably because the developer who wrote it under Windows, where that doesn't happen, and this is kind of a platform-sensitive effect that you're seeing.
Okay. I think there's also some graphic design that needs to be fixed for this, but otherwise, this is a good thing. This is exactly what we want. I think that should have an appearance that is closer to the appearance that we are used to. Given that this is going to be a pure function completion thing, it should be similar to the completion menu that you get for typing in functions, because this isn't going to be
symbol completion.
Symbol completion, yes. Because something like that doesn't want to complete. Although something like that arguably does want to complete. I think it's a complicated issue whether, and by the way, why on earth did it not clear that search for all pages containing rescale? It didn't clear that.
What do you mean? Didn't clear? I don't understand.
Shouldn't it clear the thing, that little legend up there?
Why?
I guess you're on that page. No, never mind. Forget that idea. But there's a question about non-uppercase things there. Okay, so anyway, this one is coming. Okay, so I think we're now, let's see, we've got a couple of different things going here. John, if you can put yourself on mute because we're hearing a bunch of background noise. Sander is commenting on linear model fit and so on, being able to handle around. Well, who wants to take that? Roger, Jose, fit and so on, being able to handle around, that will be a wonderful thing. Roger, can you comment on that?
Well, it's not currently being looked at. It clearly should happen at some point, but I
think that would be my main statement. It clearly should happen. I don't know what I don't think there's a fundamental difficulty. I think it's just a question of getting that code base, which has been a fairly optimized code base, to handle this completely different kind of thing.
I'm just thinking of whether it's, there's sort of a trivial way of handling it, and there's a more fundamental way of handling it. And that's why I was...
Well, I mean, Roger, one of the things that I wonder about is I wonder if the compiler could be made to support around objects. Because if it could do that, then I suspect a lot of those algorithms, there's a version of them that will be compilable that is pretty straightforward. These are not our most sophisticated algorithms.
No, I'm just thinking of what's the meaning of around, okay? And what's the meaning of the output when you have around in the coefficients?
Well, I think we have a well-defined calculus of what that means, which is based purely on, there's essentially a formula for regression, and you apply the formula and you apply it with around objects in it, and you get what you get.
What?
I think there is a first step here. Some of the results of fits give separately a result and its error. So the first thing would be to add new properties in which they give them both together.
So when you do that, yes, exactly. So those computed results, they are effectively already, arounds, but we didn't have around in version 6 when this was rolled out.
Is this going to work? Oh, that worked. That's magnificent. What's this going to do?
It's probably not going to scale because it probably treats that as a symbolic thing, and it happens to work on the arithmetic. That's not going to scale.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not going to,
But it does work, which is nice.
Yeah, for toy stuff.
Well, I mean, it's still useful. That, Roger, I mean, I think a lot of experimental data, if you've managed to get data with error bars that, is giant, so be it. But I think there's an awful lot of stuff that's comparatively small, but really useful to be able to do fits to. And I don't think we should be holding up the, the doing of small scale fits for the sake of being able to do huge ones, because I don't think a round is going to crop up that often in really huge ones. Let's see what happens if we do this. Okay, I admit that's a lot slower, but it worked.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, but regardless, I think that the net effects for the user, it should work. And the first thing that should work is that we probably should report them. But that has to be when we actually work on that function. It's not something you just, we don't work on. We're a highly leveraged company, so not everybody works, we're not working on all 6,000 functions at the same time.
Right. That's a little weird that those errors are so big. I guess that's just the way it is. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
It was a random metric, so the conditional maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back here.
Stephen, I was able to get through to Amir. Do you want him to join for the machine learning questions?
Good try.
Okay.
I don't know whether he's going to be able to. I think we maybe want to reserve those for another time. Okay, question from Tangled here. OCR of math expressions from papers. Actually, that is something that we will have some things to say about soon, I hope. It'll probably show up first in Wolfram Alpha. Yeah, that's a thing. Okay, let's go back over here to questions about import-export, option to not write metadata, such as the creation date, into PDF. Seems like a reasonable request. What is the story with that? Same image twice.
PDF export doesn't yet have include meta information option, but import-export framework does not issue any message currently for wrong options. That's why they think this should just work, but it's just silently failing or being ignored.
But include meta information is something that for a GIF, for example,
yes,
we have that. What is its default value? Is it false by default?
No, it's true by default. If something exists in the image meta information, it gets exported by default.
I see.
And you can turn it off.
Okay, so this is just a feature request for image include meta information false being meaningful for a PDF. Is that correct?
I think so, yes.
Seems like a reasonable suggestion. Is it hard to do?
No, once we have many other PDF updates that are as well. Once we work on this should be very easy.
Okay. Where were we here?
Import-export.
Import support for genomic data files. Boy, this is going to be yet another set of people who aren't here. Sorry. Okay, there's two different things here. I mean, we certainly have faster file import. Again, wrong people probably in this meeting to be able to address this completely. Is this already commented on here? No, it isn't. How come this didn't get routed to John Castle and people like that for comments?
No, it's got the internal bug report. The internal comments are in the internal bug status.
Okay.
Communication for this system is mostly between QA, technical support, and the external user, and then giving updates.
Okay, so this is also a request for out-of-core access to genomic data. I don't know the status of that. I mean, we certainly have, I mean, we're doing a lot of work right now on biosequences and genomic data. That is a good, sensible thing to ask, is whether there's out-of-core access. That is a good question for Michael and so on. I don't think we have the right people in this meeting, but can we pass that on, please?
Yeah.
Sure.
And this particular file type I am not aware of, so I can't comment on that. I don't think anybody here can talk about that, unfortunately. Imports should support video stream. Guess what? Why is my
2 tabs to the right. Yeah.
What are we showing here? I mean, this is just working, right? I mean, if we go to if we go to a random video
from 12.1. So.
Oh, I see. So where can we go to a random video on the web? How do we get to a random video on the web?
Just use the one in example data. Video of a random URL of a video does not work.
Why not?
We're working on it.
I see. Okay. So you have to have it be actually resident on your machine.
Yes.
Right now. So the streaming case does not but let's see, where's the example data one? Is that video? What is it? What is the example? What is it called?
That's import of string example data / caminandes.mp4.
Unless you send that in a chat, I'm not going to type it in.
Sure.
Or alternatively, is it in the video? This is very goaty.
Yep.
You know, somehow by the time we have a product where you can say, in fact, I have got to do this. Let us just take that image. What happens if I do a copy, that image, and I do this, and then I say image identify? Did you try that already?
I didn't.
I might be afraid of what this is going to produce. A pronghorn. Well, I don't know. Hard to know what that creature is at the best of times.
I put 2 pieces of code on the chat if you want to. I think that's what they're asking for on the Rocket chat.
Okay. All right. So this is now a video here. Do we have video frames and things yet in this version?
Which version are you running? Today's prototype should have it, yes.
What do I type?
A video frames list of out36,5.
I don't see it.
Video frame list, singular frame list. Yep.
Something like that?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that is spectacular. I hadn't seen that work before. That's really nice and it's really fast. And I can really tell what happened in this video now. I mean, I admit that you know, it would be better to use machine learning to pick, well, I don't know, that particular one isn't too harmful, but wow, that's really nice. Very cool. So would video, isn't that a useful function, Shadi, that I've been pushing?
Yeah, I used it a lot today already.
That's a good sign.
Yes.
And just so I understand it, I mean, if I say duration, okay, there's the ear piece. If I say duration of %36, I'm going to get, oh, why didn't that work? That should work, Shadi.
It's on the list, yeah.
How do I find that duration right now?
It's import of that example data string, comma duration.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, duration obviously is going to work.
Okay. Okay. Seth, who I think lives in a part of the world where he's more familiar with these creatures, says that pronghorn is a very reasonable identification. Good. Okay. Let's see. So what you're saying? Okay, wait a minute. Our node is saying, what is this moo thing? I'm always scared pasting videos into here. Okay,
Well, it's going to fail. So that's the suggestion to have a video work from a URL. I think. I understand what.
Yes, but I mean that has to be the video has to be downloaded to the local machine and then cached, right?
No, we're going to be able to stream from the URL directly. But maybe not for 12.1, but that's still under active work.
So for audio, it was a two-step process too. You know, the initial we supported it, but it effectively did the thing of downloading the whole thing and then starting. Then an iteration later, we got the full streaming where it didn't have to download. It actually starts playing. It becomes an active audio object even before it has it all downloaded.
Not yet, Roger. But yeah, that's exactly what we discussed. We're getting that first for video, and then we're doing the same for audio.
Right.
QA looked at this, and this URL is actually not even a stream. It's a playlist. It's a plain text thing. So, but that doesn't change the suggestion, but it's just FYI.
We're not having video frame, are we, anymore?
No, we removed it yesterday, maybe after the build started.
Is that going to work? Why did that go red?
You want video time series of dominant colors. And I don't know why this didn't work. It should work.
Okay. Okay. Let's go back over here. Import.webm format for videos. Comments on that, Shadi?
That's going to be supported, yes, 12.1.
Okay. I mean, we've got some absurd number of video. That's the encoders, not the is that right? Would that show up WebM here or not? Those are format types, right?
Those are format types. Did you ask for encoders or decoders? These are the ones that are supported in export. If you ask for decoders, there should be a video format, which is the last of the list.
There we go.
Yep.
But so why is WebM? Isn't WebM its own file format?
We could register more of those, but
this is just crazy how many of these things there are.
Yep.
Electronic Arts Mad Cow Video. Okay. Great. Well, glad we're supporting it. Svg Import. Oh, that is an old chestnut. I thought we had a solution to this chestnut now. What happened to Svg?
Briefly.
I mean, well, what do you mean briefly?
Very briefly?
Somebody in Johan's group had built an Svg importer, right?
Which wasn't quite operational, wasn't really in good shapes. So needed a lot of.
It would import. The main issue is that Svg is a complicated standard that has many weird things in it that are not necessarily directly representable in our graphics language. I don't know if anybody can speak to that in more detail.
So at some point, somebody sent me a list of things that they wanted to see added to our graphics language to support Svg import, and I remember there were 3 items in the list. I don't remember what they were. I'd have to do some real digging to find it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible that as we've added things like hatching and so on, that we've actually, gotten what we need to do Svg import.
Well, my recollection is that there was some issue related to gradients and some issue related to paths. And I think that may have vaguely may have been 2 of the 3 issues that were raised to me.
We'll add gradient filling in 12.2. So it's part of kind of like hatching and other things now. Same. story.
So there's a function on the function repository. Bob just put it on the chat. There's a link on the chat. So it's probably not perfect, but it may be doing like 60 or 70%
Oh,
of what
wow.
you would want to do
Cool.
for simple ones.
See, there's a question here of whether we should build this into the, I mean, clearly we should point to this from the relevant page, but it would be, you know, there's an argument that we would be better building this in, even though it's not perfect. I wonder if we have a mechanism to do that. Well, great. Well, let's feed that back to this user and see if it solves their particular SVG import issues. But Shadi, what do you think about that? I mean, even if this isn't perfect, it is a thing.
I don't think we should start using function repository functions directly in our system.
Actually, this is a very weird thing here, this intermediate format.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's doing something very funky. Fine, but this is at least a solution as a practical matter to that user question.
Yep.
Good, I didn't know we had that. A fast and safe way to parse numbers. That's an interesting point. Why is interpreter slow for this case? I thought that was using a local interpreter. Again, we have the wrong team here, but I think that's the correct solution, is interpreter, and it shouldn't be using, for numbers, that should be using local code. I don't know what's happening there.
Interpreter is faster if you give it a list of numbers, according to Carlo.
Yeah, but I don't care about that. The question is, it should be local code, and it obviously is, because that's much too short for a cloud round trip. So I don't know why that's slow, but it may be some. I mean, the commenting here on. I mean, if I say table of 10 or something of these, I mean, I'm assuming it's just going to scale.
Yeah, but if you give it a list of strings, like then the interpreter is actually supposedly faster. So just
okay, but I understand that, but I don't understand why it's so. You know, if it is slow there, I don't understand why it's so slow.
Yeah, so that's faster again.
It's a factor of 2. Not more than 3. Factor of 3 faster. I think that's a question for Carlo, why that's slow. But I think that's the right solution, is interpreter, if you've got a raw string like this. I mean, arguably, this is such a common operation, interpreting numbers, that we might want a different way to do it, but I think this is a good solution. It's interesting. Bob on our live stream is commenting, I think, with respect to the SVG stuff, that partial implementation is better than no implementation. For example, browsers have partial implementations of many things. Yeah, well, yeah, complicated issue. I mean, you know, I think a partial implementation of SVG where it works but doesn't import certain kinds of things might be an acceptable thing. It's just that it's, for what it does, it's got to do it robustly, or it's kind of more frustrating than not having it at all, I think.
Yeah, and you know, people can suggest that, you know, you're not being entirely honest.
If you say you've got SVG import and it only does a few features, well,
yeah,
welcome to a lot of the world of software.
Yeah. Even if you claim that it's not, you know, fully supported, but they're like, oh, it doesn't work for any of mine, you know. So yeah.
Okay, we got a couple of machine learning questions. I don't know if Amir will be able to address them. Feature importance in machine learning, a way to test which features are important, how performance changes when you permute features. I believe that we have a plan, right, for 12.2 for something which is doing something more or less directly to do with that. Is that correct, Amir? Or do you not know? We can't hear you.
Sure who told you that Amir is on the Zoom, but I don't see him. So
Yeah, Amir came on Zoom, but I thought you said you'd cover it at another time. So
well,
because it's late, he again locked off.
Okay.
Do you want me to find him?
No.
Okay.
No, we'll do it another time. Sorry. Let's keep those questions and auto-completion menu, we talked about that. Documentation detail thumbnail is usually cut off. What is that about?
about the magnifying glass or something.
That's weird. Well, that's okay. So that's the issue of a very low resolution screen or low.
Notice magnification has been set. So that's, I mean, I haven't tried this, but it seems to suggest that the page isn't entirely responsive to some combination of magnification and,
it looks
and a
like
narrow
a bug.
window.
Looks like a bug. I'm almost led to show you guys my oh, that's so exciting. Sorry, I was just looking at my other screen and I see that it looks like my computation finished. I mean, now I really have to go look and see whether it actually computed the thing that I hoped it would compute. And I don't think it returned the result yet. Oh dear. It's still, so all the parallel cores finished, but it didn't return the result yet. Okay. Let's not kill it now.
Did the map, but not the reduce?
Something like that, yes. Okay. Oh no, I know what it's doing. It's writing out a big data file. And it's probably writing out a file. The last one of these that it did, which I did last night, took it like 8 hours and it wrote out a 7 gigabyte file. So yeah. Yeah, it's not, the file hasn't showed up yet. I was going to show people just for fun. I was looking at some notebooks from like 1994, 1995. And it's just fun to see because you can pull these notebooks right up. And if I can pull one up, there it is. There's a notebook. It works just fine, but look at the size of that notebook. That was my computer screen size at that time, or at least a significant part of the computer screen size at that time. So, you know, I guess there's progress in the world. Okay, so this looks like just a bug. We should check into it. Thanks for reporting it. Session submit could be improved by adding possible issues section. Okay. Session submit of the scheduled task. Oh, that was that flashing up of a notebook formatting thing is a sign, I think, that my result is about to arrive. I'm sorry this impinged on this. I really thought it would be done long before I was doing this live stream. Anyway, okay. So here, what is going on here? Scheduled task. Just evaluate the expression T. It won't submit the scheduled task because session submit is hold all. Is that right? Is that the issue? Maybe there's nobody here who can address this.
Yeah, no, I think I vaguely remember. I'm trying to remember what the issue was, but you kind of have to give them together for some reason.
No, I bet the issue is yeah, look, session submit is obviously hold all, because otherwise it wouldn't submit anything here. So this is a mistake, and they're right that this should be reported in should be in the documentation. The issue is, yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't say anywhere that it holds its, you know what? This should say that expression is held. And this should say, if you want to do this, and we should give an example where you say T equals scheduled task, and you say, you know, session submit of evaluate of T, or, you know, apply it to a list of T or something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a documentation issue, as has been correctly reported here. All right, let's move on. An open all button in the docs. Yeah, what is the story there? That's a bad example because it doesn't have a lot of subsidiary stuff, but let's try. Okay, so the issue is, can you open all of these? Don't we have an open all on the web?
I think so, yeah.
So you can do this with keyboard shortcuts, of course, although that's, you know, not necessarily discoverable.
Right.
The web has it, yeah. Right next to examples, it says open all on a button. I'll give you a link if you want to, where you can just put the same one, bold. Yeah. I think it's just asking for.
Yeah, there we go. Right. Well, that seems desirable. Yeah, I think that would be the thing. Yep, that's something to look at. I agree. I have to say, I'm really pleased with these suggestions. They're really good suggestions.
I think that open all will just be useful for moderate, kind of smallish pages.
I agree.
You know, some of these visualization functions, their option section alone has, you know, like 30 pages.
Maybe we could give an indicator of how many is all.
Yes, that might be nice. Open all paren 642 or something.
Yep.
I don't think that's become necessary. I mean, why don't we do that on the web? Can you give an example of a function that has really a lot of stuff? List plot, I don't know. What can we say? Parametric plot 3D.
Sure.
I wish this auto-completed too. All right, so there, if I say open all, it just didn't do anything.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, it did it. I
That's
see.
silly.
Because it's huge. Yeah, well, but it did work. It doesn't seem useless to me, Roger.
No, that looks surprisingly good, actually.
Right, it's very, very attractive.
But these are all static images. In the product, you have no idea what evaluations that's going to fire off.
You mean scrolling behavior? I mean, not the evaluation.
Yeah, think about like the manipulate one, or the, you know, like, I mean, like all sorts of things just randomly start evaluating. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back over here. Documentation linking particular usage cases to particular examples. Yeah, we try to do that. We just have not done it as much as we could. Right, being able to go from here, huge page, from here, we do that in some cases. We just don't do that nearly as much as we might. Roger, can you comment on that?
Well, you're right. I mean, so we've tried to do that, particularly, you know, so, you know, the notes don't usually give usage cases, but they might give properties and other things. And then you want to link to an example. So that happens. And I'm sure there are thousands and thousands of such.
Right.
cases.
I mean, it's usually the more obscure notes we try to make absolutely certain there's a link to an example, otherwise it might be incomprehensible.
Right.
But it would be desirable to get more links like that.
It would be.
That better be.
I think our documentation is unfinishable.
Well, yeah, the system is unfinishable. In case you haven't noticed.
Right, that too. But it's like we can never make it good enough. I mean, it's just a question of.
Right, but I think that's look. The fact is, when I write documentation and so on, I have to admit that I don't think of those links. And possibly the reason we're not putting in those links more is I don't know in the DocuTools documentation authoring system, I don't know how easy it is to put in one of those links.
It is pretty easy. It's under
if you're looking for an example, there's one in list plots.
Oh, I'm sure they exist.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to show people what they look like. It's 4 bullets up from the bottom.
There.
Yeah.
It's a pretty modest looking creature.
That's what they look like, yeah.
I know it's what they look like. I mean, maybe they're too small. Maybe nobody can even find them, even if we... Yeah. I mean, that's probably part of why, I mean, the problem is because they're rather rare, it's kind of like you don't even notice them. We don't want to overemphasize them because they're comparatively sparse. I think there's something, we should talk about this in another documentation review discussion, what to do about these, because it's a self-defeating vicious circle.
It is. So we did actually for version 6 when we first rolled out examples, we did emphasize them and we did quite a lot. I don't think we've emphasized them as much in
right, because we don't want to emphasize them, because on a page like this it would look weird to emphasize it. There's just this one link. We don't want to overemphasize that particular case, but then it's sort of unattractive to put effort into putting them in, and users don't think to look for them. Okay, now this thing about
what is it supposed to? What is it supposed to do? It just links to the example that's relevant for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh no, the fact that you didn't know that is a really bad sign.
Okay.
Okay, a cellular automaton example. Why isn't there one? I mean, I thought that would be it's kind of crazy that we're not actually showing evolving a cellular automaton from one of these things, and that would be a good thing to do. Shadi, maybe somebody could add that. It should be very easy. I mean, you should just say, I would imagine you would just say, color negate that thing. Does cellular automaton evolve from, I guess I'd have to do image data.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably the issue that we'd say. Cellular automaton, does this work?
Should work. And then array plot or image.
Well, something happened here. Looks promising. I think it looks like it did the right thing. Anyway, just an example there. Okay. Sure. Let's see. Bob on our live stream is commenting that parsing SVG is almost as complicated as parsing natural language. That's encouraging. Seth is asking about physics project soon. Bob is asking, would like to see more implementation of things like animal properties in Mathematica. Yeah, I mean, one of the issues there, we are breaking up, again, probably nobody on this live stream is can comment on this, completely different group of people. But we're breaking up species data, which has been this giant thing. Somebody needs to put themselves on mute, please. Has been this giant blob of 3 million named species. I think there are probably 10 million total species that are somewhat known in the world, many of them being, beetles in the Amazon jungle, but or unnamed single-cell organisms and things. But we have, I think, about 3 million named species, and the problem has been that we have not broken them up properly because of issues about hierarchical entities. Those issues are now largely solved, and so we're in a much better position to do things like, say, list of mammals and so on. I don't know whether we can do that, but let's try. If we say list of marsupials, if I can spell it correctly. So that does anything. That's not encouraging. Oh, well, what is that? That's a little weird. Okay. Huh. Well, I don't fully understand that, and this is not really a good answer. I mean, let's see if I accept that. This is not a good answer. I mean, it should be possible to do an entity list of marsupials. Yeah, this is all goofed up. Oh, you guys will be thrilled to know my computation just finished. It found 53 million objects of the kind I was looking for. Ah, phew. And now hopefully it's writing out a giant file with all those 53 million objects. Okay, comment. Yeah, so we're aware of the animals issue, and it is in the process of being fixed. And the reason it's been difficult, as I say, is because of this notion of hierarchy of entities. That something is an animal, it's a mammal, it's a marsupial, etc. And being able to identify that as an entity type like thing at all those different levels. Why is this doing that? Let me just, well, anyway. Okay, Bob is saying an easier way to refer to something like %23. I am well aware of that. Thank you for supporting that. I have been pushing this for several years. It's called % modernization. And yes.
So our plan is to have a live stream meeting about this, but it hasn't happened yet because of the 12.1 push.
Okay, fine.
It will certainly happen very shortly thereafter.
Fine. We have some really good ideas about how to deal with using autocomplete menus, more or less as you're suggesting, to be able to do things where basically we have UUIDs now for cells, and so we have the possibility of having your % thing actually burnt in so that it refers to that same cell even when you save the notebook and you reopen it and so on. So there's a variety of things.
And evaluate things in a different order with the different in-out history, etc. Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So let's see. Brian on our live stream is asking about library link supporting parsing arrays of booleans and strings. You mean a mixed array? Can anybody address that here?
I don't think he means a mixed array. I think he means, I mean, we support arrays of some types. I think he's looking for arrays of more types.
I see. Is that something that we're doing in LibraryLink, or is that something that's going to happen through the compiler?
The compiler has very basic support for strings. I'm not sure about Boolean lists or arrays.
I don't know what's on the roadmap for LibraryLink, but I know that we have been gradually expanding the number of types.
Right.
But I'm speaking more as a consumer of LibraryLink who happens to know the people working on it as opposed to someone who's working on it.
So what's the bottom line here? And the bottom line here is that the compiler needs to be taught about strings. I'm disappointed that that's somewhat primitive still.
Well, it knows about strings. It's arrays of strings.
I understand. I understand. By the way,
and the compiler knows about expression, so you can work with strings. You just have to do it through the, expression type.
You guys will be thrilled or not to learn that my parallel program did successfully write out its 5 GB data file. So that's good. Makes my minute or something. Okay, external interfaces. Integrate MA Tech as a system package. So, I mean, we are hoping to do more things with tech. I must admit that, we had some issues with developer turnover and so on in that area. So we're a bit behind in that, but we had a very beautiful thing. Can anybody on this call comment on any of that?
Not me.
Yeah, I have to admit that I keep losing track of exactly where this project is. So
well, it's been in Andre's group, but unfortunately we had a bit of an inadequate. There was a long time. It's going to be developed. I wasn't very convinced, and it turned out that the development that was being done wasn't, in fact, very convincing. Sadly, I know in the cloud we're all ready to accept, tech input as part of notebook textual data. It just hasn't all been hooked up. And I agree that it's a really worthwhile thing.
Looks like somebody made a function repository LaTeX preview. That on the chat. I'm not sure if you saw that.
Okay, that's cute.
Not sure how that works. That runs through a third-party API, but it is useful, to have that.
That's nice. It's really nice, actually. Okay, but that's just a bitmap, presumably.
Preview. Yeah, it's not a typeset thing. That runs through like a web service. It's just a web service that does it.
I have to admit that I'm not an expert on tech, but I used to know this better. Am I typing TROF or am I typing tech here? I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things where I might have lost track of time. Is that tech or is that TROF that I just typed there? Or do I have to put a space?
Probably just do backslash caret is probably good enough.
Come on, somebody on this must know this. I don't think it's caret.
That's right.
Well, right now I'm failing here.
Why would I say?
Oh, what's that? Maybe underscore. Yeah, that's right. I think I was typing something from another decade before the time when I used tech.
The superscript is just a caret.
Oh, shoot! I am misremembering. Right? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a little bit of a ugly, in terms of bitmapping. Yeah,
it looks like there's two different APIs that are supported, so maybe it's possible to get a better one.
That's nice. It's really nice. Nice clean functionality here. Call Sage Math from Mathematica. I assume if we can hook it up, I assume it's not very difficult to do that. It's a computer algebra system comparable to Mathematica. It's an interesting claim. I have no idea. I mean, they have I think, yeah, I once saw the chap who developed that. He didn't answer what I asked him, so I have no idea. Whoops, where did I go here? That's the wrong page.
You can just click on.
I mean, I do think that supporting, links to all sorts of mathy and other, there's nothing, we have now in our pull down, we've got a few other languages, and I think we've got more to come. And I think that the idea of supporting, input to all sorts of, what was the one I was thinking of recently? I mean, some of these proof assistant.
Like
yeah, shell. That's right. Putting the shell in here, putting proof assistant things in there. Anything that doesn't have an incredibly complicated setup is fair game to put in there. I mean, the challenge is always, how do you get back results that are actually useful? I mean, if I type some random thing in here, the fact that that comes back as a number is important. And I don't know how to do this. I don't know this. Does this work? No. Oops. Is that valid syntax? What? Isn't there some range syntax like that?
In Python.
Sorry, guys. I'm not the right person to.
What are you trying to do?
I don't know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to type in something that's meaningful, and that's obviously not it either. I'm trying to make a range. Is it called range as well? Oh, look at that. Wow. I guess that's what happens from the fact that Mathematica existed for quite a number of years before Python came out. Cool. All right. I wonder what other functions of ours work there. All right. But it will be useful to us to know real examples of things, whether that's things like magma or gap, those kinds of things, which are potentially callable. I think those are more interesting specialized packages that do various things. But the challenge is going to be, how do we get back the data in a form that's actually useful for further manipulation?
Right.
Also, actually, on the Sage Math thing, isn't that now? I thought the project had largely died, and then it was reborn as some kind of commercial cloud hosting thing. So I have no idea whether it's actually available in any form that's useful. I would go for some of the things like Gap and Magma, which have been around a long time and which really have, important functionality that we have never considered commercially viable to support. And we've looked, we've been interested for a long time in making links to those systems. But again, it's a lot of work because it requires defining, how do you represent all these kinds of group theoretic objects and so on in our language, and that is a huge amount of work in its own right. And just being able to sort of ingest something as a string or something like that is not particularly useful. Okay, what is this? Sparse array and library link. This looks like a specific design issue, and I don't know enough to be able to comment on this. Anybody know about this? I really think we should be, again, wrong group of people here, but I really think we should be emphasizing the compiler and the use of the compiler as a way to parse complex data structures rather than library link as such. Oh my, did I not though? I didn't do my thing here. System install for Ruby and Julia. Do we not have that now?
No, this is a different thing. This is about system install as a function which will just, go and get Ruby from the internet and install it for you. Sort of semi-automates the installation of software for you. I think that's what he's asking for here.
Yes, but I mean, we are trying to do that.
Python. We have system install for Python on Windows because Windows doesn't come with Python, and so we make it easy to just get a Python installed. Looks like this specific item is just asking for the same thing for Ruby and Julia, which is not hard to do.
It's a good thing to do. I have no idea about these. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to do something like that, but it depends on what it returns. I mean, if it's just going to return a bitmap, then I don't know whether that's useful.
These things we have in the functional repository And then I think we're working on making it better in, you know,
in external
starting
evaluate.
external sessions.
Yeah,
external
okay.
evaluate and start external session.
Right. I mean, this is the, you know, it's obviously a nightmare of, and perhaps having a symbolic representation of the tree of dependencies of Python libraries would be a useful thing to do. It feels like, you know, it's a kind of a weird thing for us to be doing. It's like solve the problem of a, yeah.
Let me put a link on the chat that we have a whole bunch of things for Python, like to do exactly this. You know, installing a package and installing a Python package, you know, all of those things.
Good. I mean, the times I've tried to do this, it's been kind of nightmarish. Maybe these will improve it.
Yeah, these are just wrappers around the Python package manager, which is kind of like the, you know, the default thing there.
Make box for operator form of external evaluate. What is that? What is this? Wow, this looks interesting. External evaluate can be called as an operator. Yes, it can. Okay. Let's see. Let's look at this. Okay, cool. This looks like invalid syntax. What? I don't understand this. Do you understand this?
No, but I can take a look at it.
But so what this seems like it's saying.
I think he's basically wanting a like a summary blob form of external evaluate.
Of the return value when it isn't. So I see what he's wanting is, I see. I think I understand this, and that's an interesting idea. I mean, look, if I have an external function,
yeah, I mean, much like what resource function, you know, resource function does is.
Yeah, but look, if I'd say function, tell me how to write a function here. Give me the name of a function. Is range? Can I just use range here? Is that going to work? Yeah, there we go. So there's an external function, and if I do this, and I say that, ta-da, works. Oh, look at that, it's zero origin. What do you know? So the suggestion here would be a return type that is essentially native, that says, you know, return type native, and that would come back as something which is a blob that could be reused in that external system again. And that's a reasonable idea. Does that make sense to people here?
I think so.
Right? Because I mean, just like here, I could feed this external function back, presumably, in, I mean, yeah, I mean, like, for example, in this case, I could take that string and I could say external evaluate, you know, Python, and then that string %60. What the heck did that do? It's still a string. Oh, I see. It's a Python string.
Oh, how language string that contains a Python
string. Right, right. And so the thought would be to return it as a native object that would display as this Python string, but when fed back in, it would know to take that directly in as a native object and not take it in as a string object. I think it's a reasonable idea. Decent, good idea, actually. External evaluate cell. The gray icons are not very. recognizable.
I've complained about this before. I don't understand why we insist on having gray icons.
Yeah, integrating I mean, this is a really interesting thing, and maybe John can comment on that.
Well, I have commented on it before. It's we're talking about it, but it's not particularly easy to integrate into our current system.
I don't see why we shouldn't add.
What is she suggesting here? Hold on, with the crazy the installs the Visual Studio, Visual Code
editor. The problem is that it's very hard to, in a notebook, having a sort of an iframe in effect is not really, that's not really possible, because you don't get lots of other features that you need. So being able to have, something where you've got capabilities to have like syntax coloring from other languages in there is non-trivial. We know it's important, but it's non-trivial.
Yeah, I'm just curious how she.
Well, this is this language.
This may just be mocked up or something.
I think that's just
the second cell there, right? That.
I think that's just a bitmap, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, we can ask, but that's
right.
But in terms of these icons, part of their identity is the color, and I find it confusing as well.
I'm not sure why we exactly did that. I think we didn't. We should revisit that. Somebody could try and get that on the agenda for the Design UX meeting.
Okay, I can get that in the agenda.
Yeah, I have no idea what it would take to like support MATLAB in here. I don't know what it takes to, I don't know whether there even is an interface to it that you could call. I have no idea. If somebody knows, that would be an interesting thing, I guess. Support for multi-line outputs.
Yes, MATLAB has an interface called the engine interface. It's been there since about 94.
Okay, well, so we could probably call it. So, I mean, if we can convert data types, which we should be able to, then that would be a reasonable thing.
This is also a reasonable suggestion. It's just that.
Well, I mean, I think we in most of these cases we have to. It often requires collaboration with the organizations that are supporting these various systems. So long as we get that, we should be able to support it. I don't know what this is about.
This is multi-line, so that's just work to implement it. Like all of these things, kind of single line is easiest, and then returning strings is easiest. But then the deeper you want to make the integration, the more work it is. And that's just
Remember the type of the last external cell. Yeah, I thought we were doing that for input, for typing input. Oops, where are we?
Yeah.
I thought we were doing that. John, that's, I think, your issue, right? If I make another one here, is it going to remember that it's Julia, or is it going to? No, that's kind of silly. I thought we were going to do that. John, can you comment on that? John, you there?
Carla should make a
sorry.
note of that and follow up. That's a project management issue, but I'm sure this can be done.
Right. This is just stickiness of. Did you hear the question, John?
John, like if you switch to Julia,
he's probably not able to talk. So that's just Carla can add this to the list. This is something that we were supposed to do. I think it just got forgotten somewhere.
Okay, I'll add it.
Mohammed is asking, can Maple be supported in external cells? I don't see any reason. I mean, I don't know, because it depends on that. It depends on its world, not our world. but I don't see a fundamental reason why it shouldn't be possible. I would think anything which has a command line interface where we can, I mean, we are ultimately passing strings to a command line version of a program. And so long as we can start that program with start external session, then there's no fundamental okay, look, the issues are starting the program, being able to, and then when the thing gives a result, being able to being able to interpret that result. I don't know what I actually have on the system here. Whether
I think you want something a little bit more than that. I mean, I've written these things that parse pseudo terminals and try to infer what the heck's going on. That's not very robust. I think you want something more than that.
Yeah, I understand. It's much better if there's a proper API interface, and I don't know whether these systems have that. Okay, Nukatha is asking, ran into an issue some time ago, exporting a 3D plot as a PDF or EPS, rasterizing it so scaling didn't go so well. Okay, would love it if 3D plots could get some kind of 2D vector description for export. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying, given a 3D plot, if I make a 3D plot, can I turn that into a bunch of 2D vectors? Gosh, is there a way to do that?
If you want it to look like what it looks here, then there are no good options. I mean, you have to remember EPS and PDF. PDF was created in the 90s, EPS in the 80s. They don't support modern graphics. They really don't. So, well,
what do you mean by that? You mean the shading and things like that?
Exactly. Or transparency.
Well, I remember transparency was an issue from long, long ago. Right, but so what's your point? I mean,
well, the point is that there are two possibilities here. One is that you get in EPS or PDF
I think it's not
a high quality appearance, but it's going to be raster. The second is that you get a compromised appearance. Compromised to make it 2D friendly.
Look, in version 1, 31 years ago, we were emitting pure PostScript for these kinds of things. And we had very, at the time, modernistic code that would do resolution independent computation of every little polygon.
Yeah, and there weren't as many polygons.
Well, and I understand.
I mean, everything was basically, half triangles.
Yeah, but let me make another point.
But those were probably flat. Those were constant shades. I mean, right?
They were. Yes, they were.
PostScript did introduce a variation shading, but the number one problem was a different problem than you guys are talking about. The number one problem was crashing your printer. So in other words, we could send the data, but the printer might not. I mean, for a while, it was the case that, like in the early Macintosh days, the printer had a more powerful CPU than the computer. And so it was sort of okay. But then that stopped being the case, and one would routinely crash the printer trying to send this complex data to it.
I mean, if you tried to create a high quality thing by emulating, every single variation, gradation as a 2D call, then you're going to take, what is here, described in, I don't know, a couple 100K or something like that, as a bitmap, and you're going to turn it into a, 10 or 20 megabyte thing for this simple case.
Right. I think
start throwing in like 100 spheres or something.
But isn't there a PDF? There's a later version that has a mesh, effectively a mesh.
There was a 3D extension of PDF, and it never caught on.
I know that they removed it. They stopped.
Yeah.
But there is still, isn't there still a mesh in there?
Guys, I think the question is really this. If I want to take this image,
a 2D mesh,
and turn it into graphics, just pure graphics, where that thing is a 2D polygon that's been projected. I mean, it's similar to in geo, in our geo stuff, things get projected. Why can't we? And I thought we had this actually in version 1. We had a mechanism for turning this into ordinary graphics.
Yeah. I don't think we want to go there. It's a very backward looking way forward, and it's going to get worse, not easier.
Fair enough.
The minute we introduce shadows and other things, it's just going to continue.
I mean, it's already the case that we are doing such sophisticated things just to handle transparency. I mean, the sorting issues are off the charts. If we didn't have GPUs to work with, graphics would take forever to render. And we're doing the very sophisticated things with the GPUs. It's not simple stuff.
All right, we need to, soon we should wrap up here, but I'm really keen to just look at a few of these more algorithmic things here. Make more of example data of geometry 3D available as boundary mesh regions. Roger, that's for you.
Yes. There's a ton of stuff coming here. I'll take this particular point. That's a very immediately actionable thing, and it's a good thing. But there's so much more coming for geometry. So one thing is web geometry search, for instance, to get more examples. We'll probably
we have that, right?
Well, it may or may not make it for 12.1. It's sort of on the cusp.
Okay, so the issue is taking the potted plant as a region object.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good idea.
I mean, it is
a region object. It's just not a solid, let's say.
You mean it's there,
not,
but
so the difference between when it says boundary mesh region.
I mean, if you put a second argument region, you'll get a region object.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So the issue is what? That the
But many of them are then they're not solids, okay? They are surfaces. So to get to become a boundary mesh region, you need to become solid. And if your data is very poor, full of holes and other things, it can't become solid.
Well, right. Yeah. Talking of which, I don't think Charles heard this yet. I was trying to take some of the 3D geometry that I've just been producing, and we were trying to print it. And talking of things not being solid, this wasn't an issue of our system, but it's an issue of the printer. Let's say the 3D printer failed in some fairly spectacular ways. Trying to print things which were not adequately solid. Not an issue. I mean that our region stuff worked correctly there. It was a question of the fact that the underlying object was not solid. Detect if 2 or more polyhedra are intersecting or colliding. 2 or 3 polyhedra.
Well, we have that for regions generally, including polyhedra.
So what is it that isn't clear here? So outputs a null list of no collisions are pairs of colliding or intersecting. So in other words, if you have a random collection of polyhedra, the question is which polyhedra intersect. Why isn't that just region intersection or region? What is the Q version of region intersection?
Well, the test to do that is region disjoint. Okay, if you just want to test.
Why isn't it a Q function?
Well, because when they have parameters, Q functions are necessarily liars when you need to give conditions back.
Right, but so you're saying if I generate a bunch of random polyhedra, what do I have to do? I have to give it the number of faces. And let's say, can I give it the coordinates of the starting point? Okay, so I got a bunch of polyhedra there. If I say graphics 3D of that, oh wow, well, they're all intersecting. So if I say region disjoint of, what does it take? I see. So if I say region disjoint, apply that to line 69, it should just say true. Why did it do that? Why didn't that work? Would it work with two of them?
This doesn't seem right.
That it doesn't work?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably we are still propagating the support of that new feature in 12. So it's probably one of the functions we haven't yet completed. You know, we don't yet fully support polyhedron.
Okay. Well, that's the thing to do. So who was commenting on that? Oh, it's in here, yes. Yeah, well, something to do. I mean, that just looks like a small missing feature. Get all surface and vertex normals for any discretized region. What is that?
Could you say it again?
Get all surface and vertex normals for any discretized region. So in other words, given a random polyhedron,
yeah,
how would I find the surface normals for that polyhedron?
Well, that's a bad case. So
what do you mean it's a bad case?
Okay,
a bunch
because
of faces.
Yeah, okay, but let me describe. Some people think that a polyhedron should be faceted, like a cuboid should look like it has, some edges and stuff. In which case you don't want normals on the corners, because that will round them off.
I see.
Okay, so what you have then is, of course, face normals. The face normals are perfectly well defined for a polyhedra. For other things, when you use a polyhedra to approximate something continuous, what you really want are sort of corner normals, and that's what's used for instance.
So I don't understand it. This is, I mean, similar to things like mesh connectivity graph. Why aren't you saying generate the normals for a thing, in the whatever it is, in the whatever they are?
No, what I was going to get to, but was that we obviously have these functions, but we haven't provided a function to compute or derive normals for you.
Right, but so I'm saying you could say derive the normals for the dimension 2 spaces, that is the faces here, derive the normals for the corners, the dimension 0 pieces, and so on. And some of them in certain cases will be undefined. Or am I missing something?
Yeah, that's not actually a bad, well, it's an interesting thing that we could do for such a function. It doesn't make sense because, in the graphics language, because there we have vertex normals only. That's the only place we have to store them. We don't store
face normals.
Other. Right.
Yeah, we don't need to. Right.
Well,
it seems like a useful thing to have.
No, it does. It's not.
Okay, fine.
Many possible.
Polygon operation functions generate simpler polygons. I thought we had all of that. I thought we had a cool polygon simplify function.
No, polygonal. Is it a simplification? No. So there are many. What's the question again?
Well, the question is about simplifying polygons. I thought we had a thing.
We don't have that. Okay, we do need it, and we need that for meshes and other things too.
But what does it mean by simplify? Does it want to just decompose from the image the decomposition?
Yeah, that's why I got confused about it.
No, I think the point is that you've got something which is. I see. So there's sort of a union operation.
So let's say that you get the outline of the US, which is very detailed. Can I get a lower resolution one, a simpler one? That's usually what's meaning by simplification. When it comes
I understand, but that's a different thing. I think the issue here is you've got something like this picture where you have all those pieces as a jigsaw puzzle. They all fit perfectly together, but yet you can't get the outer triangle as a result from that.
Oh, that's what it means. Oh, that's
in principle, region union should do that. Right.
Well, okay, so currently a lot of polygon operations, including this, generate results where unnecessary division of simple polygons occurs.
Oh, right.
In what sense?
Well, the claim is that these functions are generating unnecessarily complex, sort of fragmented polygons, rather than the thing which would represent the same region but with fewer polygonal specifications.
Well, I have to see an example, otherwise it's a bug, especially for outer polygon. If you give him a polygon, he's supposed to give you the outer polygon.
Well, I think this is SU97. Check it out, Charles. I think this is, just take a look at the specifics of what's here.
Well,
okay, so there are multiple
that example
meanings.
is a graphic. It's not really a, you're doing a graphic.
Right. Union of these polygons is the correct region, but it's not the desired region. I think you have to look at the specifics here.
Yeah, and also in what class would he accept them as simple? Simple has a meaning, which means it's not self-crossing.
No, I know that, but that's not that.
But it may not mean.
That's not what I think is being meant here.
Yeah.
All right. Voronoi in 3D we've already heard from. Crop a mesh region to arbitrary region while retaining cells. What is that?
Probably
yeah.
Boolean operation or whatever should preserve the cell structure.
Right.
I don't understand this. Is this something that's coming?
It's, it's a, whether we do another sort of clipping operation separately, which is a specialized intersection operation.
Well, I put that in the, again, property inheritance. Right? So you have to preserve the cell structure.
Oh, I see the issue. Okay, I get the issue. Oh, that's complicated. Right. What do you carry over? Okay, not sure. Comment on a live stream about 3D Max and Blender, how they handle normals with smoothing groups. What is a smoothing group? That must be. Does anybody know?
That is probably, I'm guessing from my comment, was when you wanted to represent something smooth, then you want corner normals, vertex normals.
Yes. Oh, I see. So that's the group of faces which are involved in that.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting idea.
Oh, we should check it out. What's been done there? Yeah. Find longest path. Charles?
Valid suggestion.
Fine. Sounds easy. Test if all edges of a graph are distinguishable. What does that even mean? Distinguishable edges. Oh, I see. That's interesting. Issue. Parallel edges to be distinguishable. Right. So in other words, the question is, if you have a multi-edge, so let's say I have a graph that is something like, oh, I'm so used to doing these hypergraphs now. I typed them in the wrong form. Something like that, right? But I could tag those edges, or I could have those edges untagged. Yes.
Sorry.
Then the question is, do those edges have the same tag? This seems like, I think this is for Charles to look at. This is a
it sounds.
I mean, there's a potential of a lot of functionality coming later on manipulation of tag, but we have to see which one are quite useful in terms of workflow. We introduce, like in this case, we have edge tag. You can just look if there are duplicate tag out of edge tag. Right? It will tell you if they're distinguishable.
Edge tags, yeah, of this.
Right.
And there are none.
Well, this special case doesn't have any tags. So here, if you check also that is a multigraph. If it's a multigraph, it have no tag, then.
Right. I think you should read through this one in more detail. All right, we should really wrap up soon. This is some better display form for find shortest path function. What is the display of shortest path function?
Right. Well, you have not been updated. Yeah, that's an old one.
Oh, that's
Summary
ugly.
blob.
That's ugly. Yeah, that should be done. That should be done. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, I think it's oh, I'd love to go on with this. This is really useful. Let's see. Okay, apparently we're doing part 2 on Monday. So, all right, somebody has asked us to just type in one input. All right, this is very scary. This is kind of like this is where my computer gets to blow up. Okay, this is one of these machine arithmetic is not commutative issues. I'm not going to be that horrified by this, but let's try this. Z equals pi. What? What is this?
Well, look at what Z is. You know, after all those settings, what is the precision of Z? Oh, well, look at that. Yeah.
It has 0 precision.
Yeah, equal to anything.
I think the result is correct. I mean, I think that there's nothing else you can do. It's, you know, it's equal. Well, actually, let's try this. I'm curious to know whether this is correct. If I do this equal to 10 to the 10, brilliant. It'll say false. Right. So what it effectively is, it's representing any number in the interval. I don't know whether it's minus 10 to the 6 to plus 10 to the 6. But it's any number. All it knows is that the number has, you know, those digits. All right, let's wrap up. Okay, well, thanks very much to everybody. This was really useful for us. I hope it was interesting and helpful for people on the live stream. And apparently, we're signed up to do another one on Monday, and we will try and look ahead here at the topics that are going to come up, and we'll make sure that the relevant people are actually available. Great. Okay. Oh wow, lots of things here. Oh, this will be interesting. Okay. Thanks, guys. See you all soon.